Hello and good evening. Welcome to Monday night's Rangers Rabble podcast. I'm your host, Robert, tonight, and I'm joined by Wilf and William. How are we doing, lads? All right?
All good, mate. All
I'm
good.
fine. Fine.
Listen, it's been a noisy one on social media earlier on. Obviously, another sort of fan media group have had an interview with 10%, I think, shareholder Stuart Gibson. I've had a wee sample of that the night before I've come on here, so we'll delve into that and a bit more, obviously, about Hibs midweek as we go through. But it's the only place to start because it's the only thing people have been talking about since this morning. So I know you boys have been busy boys today, so I'll break it up down for you. I mean, the first sort of 15, 20 minutes is basically him giving us a wee bit of a backstory about where he's from, etc. So I don't really want to delve into that too much because it's not really interest to people that are probably watching. Other than he's an investor and a fan, and he's made a lot of money, I think, with big sort of building big warehouses in Asia. He did sort of touch on how it sort of came about and things like that, but the big one for me was 2012. He was sort of saying how it was still raw and he was hopping from that a wee bit still, but he was pressed a wee bit on relationships with other clubs and other board members, and I think that's quite prevalent still to this day. So, Wolf, I'll come to you. The phrase he used, he said, it doesn't sense any goodwill from other clubs towards Rangers still to this day after how we were treated back in 2012.
Can't argue with that. I mean, there was what 2012 and the goings on in the aftermath of the administration and the financial meltdown. What it showed was that basically we've got absolutely no allies in this country. None. I mean, even clubs that we thought, or that I thought would possibly be sympathetic to our cause, weren't sympathetic to our cause. I mean, they had a vote to keep us in the league, and nobody said, yeah, keep them in the league. One club abstained because they didn't have the bottle to say, yeah, keep them in the league. So that just showed we had absolutely no allies at all. I mean, the thing that still start for me from it happened 11 years ago, but still the amount of clubs that basically deferred it to their support base and said, well, we'll let the fans decide. Well, the fans are only ever going to decide one thing because they wanted rid of us, because it would give them a chance of winning something at some point. I mean, they would never win the league because Celtic would just win it ad infinitum if we weren't here, as was proved when we weren't in the top league and the first 2 or 3 years when we came back. But it would have given them a chance to win cups, which some of them have gone on to do. But the hatred towards Rangers has got worse because a lot of the match-going fans now have grown up in the wake of our financial meltdown 11 years ago, and they've grown up with the hatred that was pushed towards us. And it was there was a few clubs that I thought, well, they're okay. They don't particularly mind us. They don't like us because they don't. I mean, they're not here to like us. I don't like any other club in the league. Never have. But there's some that I like more than others. But they all just they don't like us. They put up with us because they know they need us. And if it wasn't for the fact that our fan base was as big as it is, they would probably still be trying to get rid of us. But they'll never get rid of us. That was proven back then. But there is. I mean, he was 100% right in what he said in the interview. There is no goodwill towards Rangers, and it's only getting worse for some clubs. There's 2 or 3 clubs that I don't think he can ever be repaired with.
No, listen, I think that's been evident, as you say, for a number of years. William, I'll come to you in the next bit because this was probably the last 10 minutes of the interview, and it was sort of the best it got, to be honest. He sort of broke down or was pressed on maybe relationships with certain members of the board. He started off with Stuart Robertson and was asked if there was maybe some harsh treatment from supporters and a misunderstanding of the director. He sort of said there was maybe on Robertson's part a scarcity of engagement. Would you agree there that the board are just not forthcoming and engaging with the supporters and also sort of fan groups as well?
I think it's been like that pretty much since I've watched Rangers, to be honest. Like, you didn't really get many interviews for anybody. Like, I think it's become a modern thing now that people want to hear from like the board, they want to hear from sporting directors, they want to hear from all these other people. See, in the past, I don't know, you could probably ask a lot of supporters who half the people were that actually worked behind the scenes at the club. They probably couldn't tell you who they were. Because all that really mattered was the players on the pitch and the manager, the coaching staff. Everything else didn't really come to the fore. Whereas now, when you look at football, all you see now is sack the board stuff, or we want this guy out. And that was never a thing 15, 20 years ago. Nobody talked about doing things like that. It's never really been a big thing in my heyday. When I grew up watching Rangers, I didn't really care who was putting money into the club. I was just watching the team on the pitch. So, I didn't worry about wage bills or transfer fees, and obviously stuff like FFPs come in. So all this thing's all very, very new. So all this stuff about let's hear more from more people. I'll be totally honest with you. See if Rangers put out a 1 hour interview with Stuart Robertson, how many people would actually sit and take a notice of it? I don't think there would be that many, because that's just how football is. People just want change all the time. And the one thing I would say is, see when people say stuff like sack the board, I don't think there's hundreds of other people out there that are looking to invest in Rangers Football Club, especially when it's in Scottish football, because Scottish football just doesn't really make any money. So all you're doing is putting your money into a club and you're never going to see it again. That's the sad reality of investing in Rangers and Celtic to a point as well. I don't see... this guy, for instance, I think he's put in about £5 or £6 million into Rangers. He's never going to get any of that money back. He's done it because he's a fan. He's invested in the club because of that. He knows he's never seen that money again, just like all the other guys in the board who've pumped in loads of money. They're never going to see the 20, 30, 40 million. It's all gone, because I don't see anybody or a huge queue of people looking to buy the shares either. And if there is, there's always going to be scepticism of people that's out with the kind of known people. So what if I don't know, somebody from Saudi Arabia said that they'll buy Rangers? How comfortable would you feel, given what's happened in the past? This is the problem that people will always have. So it's easy to say, let's get these people out the door, but at least we know who these guys are. Whereas if somebody comes in as an investor from outside who, nobody knows anything about, maybe after a year or two, they're thinking, this investment's not going anywhere. They could just walk away and leave the club in a really terrible position. Whereas these guys are not going to do that. I accept people want to see the team winning in the pitch, but I don't really get the whole get the board out thing. That's just my personal opinion on it.
Well, that theme seems to be growing stronger. Obviously, there's a lot of obviously we've got the banners, which I'm sure we'll touch on later on. But there's been a lot of sort of posts on social media with pictures of Stuart Robertson and Ross Wilson, the crosses in their face. This thing's sort of blown up tonight about the Peruvian Owls, I think it was, or was it Paraguayan Owls? What was it, Wilf, you were talking about earlier on?
Yeah, Paraguayan Owls. I'm not quite sure. Carr did say that apparently the Paraguayan Owl is on the verge of becoming extinct, and that she thinks that they're wanting to make the board extinct. I don't really know, because for me, if you've got a campaign slogan that people don't understand, what's the point? You know what I mean? Because nobody knows what it means. Because we're guessing that that's what it means. I hadn't even seen it till I saw it in the group chat earlier on, to be perfectly honest, because I don't pay a lot of attention to things like that. Because, as William said, when we were younger, you didn't even know who owned it. You're lucky if you knew who owned your football club. You probably couldn't name your director. Your directors or your chairman or whatever, and a lot of it's coincided with the advent of social media, because you can't keep anything quiet these days. Social media peddles loads and loads of stuff, absolutely loads. I saw quite a good thing. It's totally not football related, but I saw quite a good gif a couple of days ago on social media, and it was a guy speaking to a couple of Amish gentlemen, right? And he said, "How come you have never had COVID?" And he said, "Quite simply, because we don't have televisions." Well, because it's never been peddled to them. So that's it. Somebody starts a campaign and they see it on the TV or they see it in social media, and it gathers a lot of traction. And what you tend to find is that it's like the people that are for the campaign are a lot more vocal than the people that are against it, despite the fact that quite often there's a lot more people against it than for it. But you don't hear them because they don't say much about it. William's right. You can't sack a board. That's ridiculous. You just can't. You can kind of force them out, but to force them out, you need somebody to buy them. somebody to buy it. And I don't ever want us in the situation where one person owns Rangers again, because what happened before can happen again. And we don't want... I mean, there's other clubs in Scotland who are but for the grace of God, go them, because they're owned by single individuals. And if they decide to pull out or sell to a charlatan, they'll end up in the same situation that we were in. Although I don't doubt for a minute they'll be treated completely differently the way we were.
And that's it. See, what I was going to say quickly is I get, right, there's different age groups, right, who support Rangers. So people go on about this, like sort of Rangers dash stuff and all that. See, the simple reality is, like, sort of see when we grew up, right, a lot of the stuff that you see now, it wasn't a thing. I mean, I went to the football without a mobile phone. So I would leave the house at like 9 o'clock in the morning. You didn't get back until like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. You know, like people didn't know where you were, other than the fact you were away to see Rangers. You could be on a bus, sitting in the pub, at the game, back to the pub, back on the bus, back down the road. And nobody asked where you were, what you'd done. You didn't take pictures. You didn't tell the world that you'd been to a football match. Whereas now, everything's just magnified 1,000 times over. So like, you can't get away from anything. So everything that happens at a football club, or you know, this guy's not doing his job, that player's this, that player's that. And that's what social media brings to the table. And see, to be honest, it's a big reason why I don't go on it as much now as I did once before. Because if you go on and you actually read some of the comments, it's crazy. You know, you'll have maybe like sort of 3 messages, and it'll be Ryan Kent was great in that game. Next guy below, Ryan Kent was shite. And then the tweet underneath will say, I think we should let Ryan Kent go for free at the end of the season. So how can 3 people have so different opinions on the space of 3 tweets? And this is the madness of social media. Whereas in the past, other than sitting in a pub with your mates or sitting in the bus, you would never really like put stuff like that anywhere. It was just a chat between all the guys in the bus. And that's what's changed.
It's also sorry, Robert, it's also so easy. Right? It's also so easy, and I know I've suffered from this, and William suffers from this as well. It's so easy for people to say things on social media behind a keyboard that they would never, ever say in public. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you get people saying, oh, this, you know, Ross Wilson's this, or Stuart Robertson's that, or Ryan Kent's the next thing, and this one's that, and Roberts, whatever. You know what I mean? And it's easy for them to sit and press the buttons on a keyboard, because they know they're never going to see these people. They're never going to have to justify what they've said, which is where a lot of this nonsense comes from, because some people believe absolutely everything that they read on social media.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas those of us that are a wee bit longer in the tooth that grew up without social media believe absolutely nothing that we read on social media.
No, because you grew up going to the
most
games.
of us a lot of shit.
That was all you knew.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what? And see, just quickly before we move on to the next thing, I think the one thing we'll say is, like, we're not being critical of other people's opinions. We're just saying that, like, depending on your age, you probably see things differently. And that's the only difference. Do you know what I mean? And the problem is, and I think I said it prior to the pod, I don't think a lot of people actually know what Ross Wilson does. I think a lot of people just put his name in front of everything and say, well, he signed him. I don't believe for 1 minute that Ross Wilson is the only guy that makes a decision on a player being signed.
Well, just on that then, that's a good point, because Ross Wilson was the next guy came on to, and he said unequivocally he's doing a brilliant job. He said he hit the ball at the park with Barcy and Rabble, and he said he's been unlucky in recent windows with injuries. So, William, you're saying that Ross Wilson shouldn't be attributed to every name that's been brought into the club, unless I'm mistaken what you said there. But what? Who should be taking the hit for the signings?
Well,
because
all the people that sit and make the final decision on a player. You know, there's clearly a lot goes into signing a player. There'll be a lot of scouting work. I'm sure there's a lot of analytical work goes on. Obviously, the medical staff look at the history of the player to determine a lot of these things, although it does feel like some of the times we sign guys, you start to think, what's going on here? Because they seem to come in and then break down. But it's clearly not just Ross Wilson that's making all these decisions. You know, like, sort of money's got to be signed off, so the board will obviously make that decision. Then you've got the manager must have some type of decision making in it. You know, the scouting network must bring a lot of these people to the attention of Rangers. You know, to me, like the one that really surprised me the most was the lad Zakowski, the Polish player. Right, he comes in at the end of a window for like a nominal fee, whatever it was, maybe a couple of £100,000. He plays very little games, and then all of a sudden he goes out on loan this year where he's not even really played that many games back in the Polish league. So see, to me, things like that are a concern to me, because who watched him, who put him forward for the move, who thought that was the right fee, and who determined that this guy was good enough to come into the first team squad, given at that time with guys like Adam Devine pushing? So these are the kind of questions I have about the transfers. And I also believe that, see, at the end of the day, when you look at the recruitment that went on, even like sort of last summer and then in the January window there, that's not just down to Ross Wilson. There's so many other people at fault for that decision. I'm not sitting here saying Ross Wilson's doing a good job, right? But I'm just saying, I think a lot of people are quite literally pointing the finger at him for everything. And it's not just him that puts the money there, that signs the players, that makes all these decisions. It must be like a group of them that must make that final decision. Because there's no way that one man should oversee the whole thing.
Well, if you listen to the last three managers, right, from Steven Gerrard, who had a lot of say in who signed, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, and the current manager, right, they've all said that they get the final say on the signings, right?
Yeah.
Because they have to work with the players every day. Now,
yeah, of course.
As I understand Ross Wilson's job, or the director of football's job, and I would imagine it's the same for Ross Wilson, right? The manager goes and says, look, we need this position, this position, this position, this position. And Ross Wilson sends the scouts out to go and have a look at them all. And they come back and say, right, we've got this list of players for that position, this list of players for that position. And the manager goes, right, okay, in order of him, and him. Go and see what you can do. So Ross Wilson, to my belief, would then have to go to the board and say, look, we've got a chance of signing this guy who's the manager's number one choice, but he's going to cost you X. And they go, we can't afford X. Go and try and get number two, who's going to cost you Y. Because we can just about afford Y. Yeah. I think that's the way it works. So they're all involved. For me, a lot of the reason that we've ended up with some of the players that we have is they're trying to take cheap punts on players that have got injury records. And if we can get them fit, then they'll do a turn for us and we'll turn them around for them. I mean, if Kemar Roof didn't have injury problems, he'd be nowhere near Scottish football, because he's a tremendous striker, right? He would be nowhere near Scottish football, right? 100%. But he's got an injury record that we thought we could probably do something with, but we can't, right? But then you have to look at how he's been managed. And I'm just using him as an example because he's a recent example, right? For example, and I'm not criticising Michael Beale because I think he's doing a relatively good job. I don't understand why Kemar Roof came off the bench from a 2-0 up against Livingston 8 days before a cup final, when we know he's made a glass and he might need him in a cup final. I don't get it, because there's a chance he's going to break down. Keep him. If he's going to break down, let him break down at Hampden. At least you've got the use of him then. But that's something that they should all be looking at, not just the manager, the director of football, who, as I understand it, runs the entire football operation. And if you want, they'll go off on a big diatribe about making the same mistake twice, because what they did was we won the last title in 2020 in 2021. Didn't fix the roof while the sun was shining, to coin Steven Gerrard's phrase. And we've been going downhill ever since. The women's team, who will have a podcast about at 10 o'clock tonight, I just thought I'd throw that in. The women's team, who won the league last season, also unbeaten like the men's first team was, right? They're progressively getting worse because we haven't fixed the roof while the sun was shining after they won the title. Now, if, as I understand it, Ross Wilson is head of the football operation and he's in charge of the whole thing, something's not right. Now, whether that's because the board have said, look, we're doing okay, you're not getting any money to invest in these, to bring in players.
Yeah.
Or to bring in the right quality of players, but would rather you took a punt on these guys, and if we can get them fit, and we'll invest in the medical team. They could be investing, and I don't think they have, because the injuries have been ridiculous. But they could conceivably have said, look, we'll bring in injuries. We'll get them fit. We'll move them on. So they might have invested in the medical team or in medical science to help that. And we won't see that. We don't appreciate that. And I don't think for a minute that could have happened. We don't know, because go back to what the guy said in the interview with that other podcast, right? They're not telling us anything. The communication's no great, you know. And if we were winning, we wouldn't give a monkey's about communication. If we were sitting 9 points clear at the top of the league and we just won the League Cup, nobody would be caring that the board aren't talking to us, because it's all about what the team does on the pitch. So if we can start winning things, nobody cares that Ross Wilson's not doing a good job, or Stuart Robertson isn't speaking to you, or Douglas Park's this, or John Bennett's something else. Nobody cares. It's all about what happens.
Although that's the reality.
That's only they can fix.
Yeah. No, see what I was just going to say before you jump in. I think that's the truth. See when teams are winning, nobody really cares. I really like sort of obviously watching Rangers when they were winning 9 in a row, when Advocaat came in. Did any Rangers fan really care how much we spent that first summer that Advocaat came in? No. I don't even remember the fees that we paid for some of the players. I just remember us signing guys, and then when the season started, we were like, that guy Van Bronckhorst is quite a good player, isn't he? And then that guy Arthur Newman, you can see why he's like a Dutch international. It's like, whereas now everything's just, it's crazy. I just look at some of the stuff down at Chelsea with like the Bowley thing and how much money he spent, and people are criticising this guy for spending his own money. This guy spent hundreds of millions of pounds, and people are criticising the guy for spending the money. And then they're criticising him for appointing the manager and sacking Tuchel. And football, like these days, is crazy. It's so much more because of Sky and BT and all these other big companies that are pumping in billions of pounds, while Scottish football is getting less on a television deal than what many of the other countries are in Europe. It's crazy. And see, to be honest with you, the only people who are to blame for the current state of the game is the people that oversee the game, the SFA, the SPFL. All these people are to blame for the state of Scottish football and the fact that the league has just slowly drifted. And if it wasn't for a couple of good performances in Europe in recent years for Rangers, I think a lot of people would be looking at Scottish football and thinking, these guys are nobodies. They don't even care anymore. Scottish football's so far away from where it was 20 years ago. And it's scary, to be honest. And then you look at the league this year. I don't think we've been a great team this year at any real point, to be honest with you. But you look at the amount of games that we've actually lost in the league. A half-decent Rangers team from 15 years ago, when you were still going to Tynecastle and getting beat with Dick Advocaat's team, when you were struggling to go and win at Pittodrie. These things were happening because you were playing against better opposition. The standard in Scotland has dropped remarkably, and that's because a lot of guys are now coming from the National League in England and stuff like that. Whereas in the past, at least, you were signing players from a slightly higher standard than that. And that's where Scottish football is, and that's where our market is. Sadly, whether people like that or not, that is where we are.
I think we'll park that interview there because I think we touched on some good stuff there about transfers, and I want to sort of come into another story that's obviously gathered a bit of momentum this afternoon. Obviously, Ryan Kent linked with Vincent Kompany's Burnley. And, well, firstly, Wilf, you sort of said there that Ross Wilson, head of the whole football sort of operation. Where does it stand then with contract renewals and obviously this man, Ryan Kent?
As far as I'm concerned, the contracts are 100% down to him. He's the man, as far as we're led to believe, that is in charge of the contracts because he's in charge of the football operation. Now, I know, going back to what I said earlier, he can only spend as much money as the board are giving him. So if he goes to the board and say, look, we've offered Morelos a contract on 10% more than he's on, is that okay? And they say no, give him the same as he's on or nothing else. If he doesn't accept it, then that's fine. That's nothing the man can do about that. But the fact that we've got so many players going out of contract at the same time, under his watch, is scandalous. It's absolutely scandalous because we shouldn't have 8 or 10 players, whatever it is, going out of contract at the same time. We just shouldn't, because to me it's a dereliction. He should have been offering them a year ago. He should have been offering them extended terms. And if they said no, selling them in January at the latest to get something in for them. I mean, Ryan Kent, case in point, if Ryan Kent couldn't commit his future, he had to go in January because we had to get money back for him. Morelos can go for free with my blessing in the summer because we've had 6 good years out of a guy that cost us £1 million. Right? Yeah. He's a leading European goal scorer. Right? £1 million. That's £1 million we spent. Ryan Kent costs us about £7 million. Right? Yeah. We need a return on that. But it doesn't look like we're going to get that if you believe his girlfriend. I don't tend to believe girlfriends. So, apart from my own one, of course, in case she's listening. But
well played, well played.
you know, but yeah, the contracts are down to Ross Wilson as far as I'm concerned. But again, it's not all down to him because he can only spend the budget that he's given.
But no, what you want to say to William, what is the strategy then? As Will says, there's a lot of players coming out of contract at the same time. We can draw on the Connor Goldson, how long that played out last season, and he signed very sort of late on and obviously tried to stay. Where's the strategy in keeping your best assets?
I mean, this is the thing. It's like, so I see as a supporter, you're always trying to kind of look at the outside and think, right, so what are they thinking there? You know, so to me, see if a player signs a 4-year deal, see once he's had 2 years of that contract, that's when a decision's got to be made on that player, whether you extend or you sell him. Because at that point, the value starts to drop, and then it becomes more difficult to retain players. The fact that like the Goldson situation kind of ran out the way it did last year, I think I didn't expect Connor Goldson to stay first and foremost. I've got to say that. So the way Rangers put out that tweet that day, I read the top part of it and just thought, all right, Connor's away, so be it. But then a couple of seconds later, you look down and you're thinking he's signed for another 4 years. Well, I mean, I know at the time people kind of spoke about potentially that Brighton were due a fee if Connor signed a new contract. So Connor basically let his contract run out and then signed the contract, which meant that Rangers didn't have to pay a further fee to Brighton for his services. Now, I'm not saying that's the same with Ryan Kent because I don't know if that's the case. However, for one of our supposed best 11 players to be also basically what he's got about 3 months left in his contract, and so is Alfredo Morelos. These decisions should have been made quite a while ago, and that is a fair criticism of the board and Ross Wilson. And see if Ross Wilson is told this is our maximum budget in terms of wages, signing on fees. This is what you need to work with. That's fair enough. You see if somebody's like, asking for silly money. Because Eddie, we've got a budget for Scottish football. That is our main budget. And then hopefully, we make it into the group stages of the Champions League or the Europa League, which allows us to do a little bit more. But that's the reality of where we are as well. We can't say to Alfredo, oh, there's 50 grand a week. Because that would just be ludicrous to do that kind of deal. I mean, if the rumours are true that he was on, about 30, 32, I think people were saying he was on at the time. So there's probably a lot of goal bonus included in that. There's probably appearance fees included in that. There's probably loads of additional stuff. And this is the thing that you just don't know. But I mean, what I would say to people, I've saw some stuff on social media saying, oh, but, we can replace Ryan Kent, we can replace Alfredo Morelos. I don't think it's quite as easy as that. And I know people are going about Alfredo's only ever scored 13 goals in the league in this. See what Alfredo Morelos does. He works a back four better than any striker I've seen at Rangers in a long time. See the way that defenders actually have a fear of playing against Morelos. That's something you don't get from a lot of other players. What Alfredo's criticism, and it always has been, and it will be until the day he leaves Rangers, is that he just doesn't score enough goals. But then, like Wilf touches on Roof, basically whenever he plays, he scores. But the fact he's missed like 100 games over the space of 3 years or whatever it is absolutely diabolical. So it's like you're trying to fit like those two guys into one. See if you could put Roof and Morelos together. I mean, that would be the perfect striker. But we can't afford that type of striker because they don't exist in our market.
But here's a question. Sorry, here's a question for you then, William. You said that the Morelos and Kent would be replaceable, or wouldn't be replaceable. Either way, if they do go, we've spoken about Ross Wilson and his past sort of endeavours in the transfer market. Is he the guy to be trusted to be bringing in and replacing those players in two, arguably, of almost key positions?
Well, this is where the manager, you would like to think is making the final decision on these type of things. That's how it should be. He's the one that's bringing it in. I mean, I don't get comments like Thomas saying you could replace Morelos with a corpse. I mean, I'm not being disrespectful, Thomas, but see if you're watching a game of football and you don't think Morelos is a huge part of how we play, I'm not really too sure, mate, like, so what your game you're watching. Because Alfredo Morelos is a massive part of our first 11. He has been for several years. This thing now that people keep having a pop at Morelos is absolutely beyond me. See when we lose him in the summer and you see who we probably replace him with. That's when people will appreciate what Morelos does, because there's no many guys that can do what he does. And it's not just about his goals, it's about what he does out with that. It's the way that he can attract the attention of the defenders, that allows midfield players to get into the box and score goals. It's the way that he holds the play up. It's the way that he brings other players into play. A lot of these things don't seem to go like sort of known by supporters. I can't understand it. And the same with Kent. It's not just about Ryan Kent's assists or his goals either. There's so many more things to go with it. I mean, that's just ludicrous to say that he's lazy. I mean, do you ever look at Morelos' stats? Do you know what I mean? Like, so Morelos is always in the top 3, the top 5 guys in the pitch for the amount of running he does in the pitch. People have got a thing now with Morelos. Like, I don't really understand it. I think people will only realise how good Alfredo was for us when he goes. And it's the same with several other players that we've got at the moment. Like, the criticism that comes our way. I'll say something right now. We will really struggle to find a better keeper than what Alan McGregor was for Rangers. We'll never have another fullback like Tavernier that assists and scores the goals that he does. We'll never find another Stephen Davis because of what he's done for the football club. I feel that this summer and moving forward, we're going to struggle to recruit the same standard of player that we've had even over the last few years, because I just don't know if the budget's there to go and do that. And that's just my honest opinion on it. I really do think we'll struggle to replace the players that we've got right now with a better quality, or a better quality that the supporters think that we can get or we should be able to afford.
Well, if I could see you were about to say something there, on you go, pal.
No, all I was going to say is that William's right in what he says about that we won't realise what we've got until it's not there. But I mean, if these big players do leave, the one thing that it does give us is a bigger wage budget, because they're all high earners, so there'll be more money. But it's who you bring in. You know what I mean? And I worry that we're going to be shopping in the bargain basement, or we're going to be looking at free transfers again. Now, it's encouraging for me that the manager said, look, when he was pressed on it, look, I've got names and the club's given me names. So Michael Beale's bringing names forward as well. And when I go back to what he said in January, that he's got a striker lined up, but he's not available till the summer, saying who it is in case somebody else comes and gobbles him up. So hopefully that's right and that comes through early. And it is a decent striker, but we don't know who it is. It could be Lyndon Dykes. It could be anybody. We don't know who it is. It might not be somebody who's worked with before. You know what I mean? But at least if you take the man to his word, he's bringing some names to the table. And if the director of football and the board of the directors doing their job right, they'll try and get the guys that he wants. Because look at what's happened across the sea, right? The Fat Aussies come in, said, I want these guys that I know who they are. And they do the job I want them to do. They've gone and signed them, and it's worked for them.
Yeah.
So if Michael Beale's want to bring in his own guys.
No, and that is massive. We spoke about that on the after match reaction on Saturday. But I think Tim Sharp hit on a point that I was going to bring up anyway. Like, big players have left Rangers before. You guys are a lot older than me and remember far more many players than I'll remember. But big players have left Rangers. Big players have left Rangers before, and we have filled in those positions. I don't think it's something to be feared. That if we lose the likes of, you mentioned Tavernier and Davis and McGregor, I don't think that should be a fear. Maybe no all at once like we're going to do in the summer, albeit, but certainly I think it should something that Michael Beale should embrace, because I do think Wilf, what you say is important. He needs his own players. He really does. Just to go into, I think we're going to move it slightly on towards Hibs, and the manager obviously spoke today. Wilf, you touched on bits and pieces there, and he did say that we should be really optimistic about the future, and I took that as he knows that things are happening in the background and we are talking to players. So, William, Hibs Wednesday night, how big is this going to be? It's a big week for the club.
Look, I think the reality is that we're not going to finish any lower than second, are we? But it looks as though it's going to be a tough push to try and win the league, clearly. I mean, like, these remaining league games and the cup games are basically for the manager to make a decision on who he's going to keep come the summer. That's where we are right now. I mean, the guy's lost one game in like 20, and yet you'll still see people criticising them. I mean, that's the difficulty of coming to Rangers now in terms of, the transfer budget. When you look at the squad, how he's going to replace players, and this is what I'm trying to point out to people. It's all right for people to say stuff like, it's okay, we can replace him or we can replace him. But I don't think we will replace some of the guys that are going with the same quality. And that's my genuine fear come the summer, that if we're only going to add, say, 3 or 4 first-team players, we're going to lose more than that in the summer. So unless there's guys who are currently, within the squad, or unless he's going to utilise the loan market and try and bring in players like that, I don't see us spending a huge amount of money this summer. I just don't see it. The fact that we spent so little in January, and we obviously try to haggle those prices down as low as we physically could to try and get those guys in. I don't see you spending a huge amount in the summer. That's why I think they'll try their best to try and sign Kent and Morelos to new deals, because they'll know privately that he's trying to replace these guys. How much would it cost to replace Kent? Or how much will it cost to replace Morelos? I know people will point towards, well, we're keeping guys longer than we should. But then, who do we find to replace these players in terms of, the cost value? I mean, Ryan Kent overall has done a really good job for Rangers. That's how I see it. His European performances, he's shown up in a lot of the big games. People point towards the stats again with these things. I just think that Ryan Kent does a lot more on a football pitch other than to assist and score goals. I get people point towards other players, which is now a thing that people bring up. They bring up all this XP and all this stuff. Like, to me, I don't really think these things are a big thing for me personally. I view a player on what I view on a football pitch, and that's how I'll always do it. But I just think it's going to be really tough come this summer to recruit, and I think we should enjoy what we've got left of the players we've got, because I think next year people will be shocked when we see the standard of player, because I really do worry that we'll just not spend the money to bring in the players that we really need. So I would enjoy, hopefully, a victory over Hibs on Wednesday night. Alfredo to score a couple, to run, I don't know, maybe he'll be the top runner in the pitch and he'll score 2 goals and we'll 1-2-0. That would be great for me, because that annoys people and I quite enjoy that.
Well, I want to play devil's advocate.
Sorry, you'll have a fair job being the top runner because you're going to start on the bench on Wednesday, but that's another story.
Well, we will come to that. We will come to that.
I don't see
that. Just on what William was saying on the back of that, I think it's important to play devil's advocate. And you're saying we won't get any, we'll get the players in that we need and spend the money. And I probably agree on the money part. But well, surely if Ryan Kent's coming out of contract, surely there's got to be players of similar quality coming out of contract in other parts of the globe. No.
Yeah, I mean, what you've got to remember as well, right? We spent just under £1 million on a striker nobody had ever heard of, a Colombian striker from a club in Norway that nobody had ever heard of, and now we're all crying because he's going to be leaving. So, you know what I mean? That's a fact. 6 years ago, nobody had heard of Alfredo Morelos. Who is he? Nobody knew. He came in, and look what he's done for us. You know what I mean? And the majority of the sport absolutely love him, right? So, what's to say that they won't find another Alfredo Morelos somewhere? I mean, we probably are, but we'll have to look a wee bit further afield than the lower leagues in England or France or Holland or whatever. We need to look further afield. I mean, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought Rangers would have signed a Colombian striker from a club in Norway. Not ever, because you wouldn't expect to find a Colombian striker in Norway, but they found him.
Yeah, well,
Finland, wherever it was, Finland, Scandinavia. Right? Okay, Scandinavia. Right. Sorry, I'm getting a wee bit excited. It's been a long day, and that's what I get for using Mark's research. But anyway, but yeah, and then Ryan Kent. Nobody really knew much about Ryan Kent when we signed him. When he's done, same applies to him. He's done a great job. Glenn Kamara. He went from Arsenal to Dundee. Did okay at Dundee. He was never a standout. He wasn't a name on everybody's lips when we signed him for 50 grand. So there are those bargains out there. We just have to find them. I mean, the frustrating thing for me, touching on what William said, is, and I mean, I'm considerable than both of you, is that a lot of the people that are heavy on social media and peddling all the noise, right? They're younger guys who are stats driven, right? They're all younger guys who are stats driven, right? I'm like, well, I don't even know what XG is. You know what I mean? You keep hearing, they say, the player is an 8 or a 6 or a 10, or that's more or less alien to me, And because people look at stats. Stats will tell you anything. There's an old saying: "There's lies, damn lies, in statistics." Right? You can look at statistics any way you like. I mean, I put something in the group chat earlier about they reckon Morelos is the worst striker for chances created to chances converted. That's probably right. But look at the chances that he creates. There's nobody there because he's up front himself and he's not getting the support from the midfield, etc. You can read it any way you like. You can read the stat any way you like. And if all you're relying on is a player's stats, you're not going to have success with players. Because like William, I believe my eyes. I believe what I see on the pitch. You have to do the eye test. It's all very well saying, okay, we'll look at all the stats and this guy looks really good. You have to actually go and physically look at the guy. And you don't just look at him once, you look at him more than once to say, yeah, that guy's good, that guy's not good. You know, so all these people that are looking at stats, they look at the stats this guy's got, doesn't really tell you anything.
No, I think the thing that, so we see one of the best arguments I heard recently by a guy, because he was talking about, the guy, Patrick Kasky, I think it is, but it's a lot of stuff on social media.
Yeah.
And I think it is interesting to a point, right? But you know what those stats don't tell you? If the players get character, if the player can roll up at Celtic Park in front of 60,000 people and like cope with criticism and being coped with all the abuse, and then like you look at all the stuff on social media now, is a player mentally strong enough to cope with that? Because even a player is scoring maybe 25 goals in another league, see when you come to Rangers, it's like a different planet. Because see the pressure as soon as you walk in the door, the level of expectation, it's crazy. And you've seen guys who have won Champions League come to Rangers and totally fall apart. You know, so that shows you the level. And it's just, I think a lot of these things are great. And I think it looks great when you look at this, a guy averages a goal every 110 minutes or he averages an assist. See, the reality is, for most football clubs now, it's just, I think you've got to look at a player overall. I mean, to me, somebody like Raskin already looks like somebody that's got character. It's got a bit of desire, a bit of fight, a bit of passion about him. I think he'll be absolutely fine at Rangers. I mean, Cantwell, I'm still 50-50 on. I think you can see the quality the guy's got when he's on the ball. But you just wonder if in some of the big games, when maybe you roll up Easter Road, Pittodrie or Parkhead, is he going to be the guy that's going to make the difference on that game? Or is he the sort of guy that's going to drop onto the bench because you bring on another tough midfield player that's going to be enough to fight out a draw or to maybe try and steal a 1-0 win?
Well, there's a good point actually, because obviously we are going to Easter Road on Wednesday. Hello, Martin. How are you doing? You're going to be on the other side of the fence for this one. I'm coming to you with this.
But before you do, I'm just literally in the door. I had to rush home because I was getting messages saying that William was winding everybody up in the comments. I don't know what's going on.
No, look, it's just my opinion. It's just my opinion at the end of the day. You know, people
he told somebody he was wrong, that's all.
No, it's like people going about, I mean, like, I keep seeing stuff like, he scored 12 league goals. So what do people want? See if Alfredo scored 25 goals a season, right, but we still didn't win anything. In some people's eyes, he would still be shit because we haven't won anything. See, I've seen Rangers strikers who have been part of title-winning teams who have scored 12, 13 goals. But like people don't go back and criticise them for that. This is now the modern era, right, where you get people coming in and being very critical over statistics. Like, see, to me, these people don't watch like enough football in terms of like the old school way when you went to a game and you judged it with your eyes and you judged a player's quality, and that's the reality of it.
No, listen, this is the fantastic thing about doing podcasts. Everybody's got an opinion. It's great.
The problem I've got now is like there's too many of them that are sitting on social media, right, and they're looking at stats.
Mm-hmm.
Stats mean nothing. I mean, see, at the end of the day, see if you're just going to look at stats for everything, that isn't going to always bring up a good football player.
No.
People going about Brighton and Brentford, these teams are still out spending 15, 20, 25 million on one player. We're never going to be able to do that.
No,
so our market is a lot smaller than that. And the reality is, like, Michael Beale also knows the English market, so I'm pretty sure come the summer we're going to be tapping into that as well. People are going to be critical because I don't doubt for a minute we might sign somebody from maybe like the English League One. We might sign a player for, it's like Tom Lawrence, like he came for Derby. You know what I mean? And at the start of the season, he was one of our best players. And that's just where the tough thing is for us, is we've been out and spent a lot of money on Ridvan. he's obviously really struggled. He's now picked up an injury. There's talk that he might be playing tomorrow in the Glasgow Cup tie, which is great news because I do like Ridvan. I do think he can be a good player. But like that's the balancing act to the board, right? People will scream for the rooftops, will spend money. But you could argue if you're looking for value, who was the best value signing of the summer? I mean, see if people can put that in the comments, for instance. Who was the best signing of the summer? I think you could argue that Tom Lawrence was one of the best signings of the summer, and he never cost us a penny.
Until one of the Rangers medical team put a bandage on with a nail gun. Until that happened.
And that's the thing. I mean, that guy came off the pitch that day, and like I think Gio said after the game, it's fine, he'll be okay for the next game. And he's never been back on the pitch since then. So, yeah, look, medical stuff this season has been really, really tough. But then, like, you look at the other side of it, we brought in Tillman on a loan with the potential to sign the guy. So, like, who should get the acclaim for that deal? You know what I mean? So these are the things. It's easy to always look at the negative stuff.
No, it is. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, for me anyway, just my own personal opinion, I think Morelos has been fantastic for Rangers, but he's been here too long. He has to go. He's been here too long.
And that's fair enough.
Alan McGregor, Rangers legend, one of the greatest ever goalkeepers, but he's past it now. We need to replace him. So these things.
But it's the standard of replacement. I mean, it's the standard of replacement we're talking about here.
Sorry, well, just to come in, you said there though, like about going to League One and stuff. You just need to look at Matt O'Reilly. That's a bargain. He's a decent quality player in our league. So there's gems out there. You've just got to find them. You really have to find them.
But that brings back to the question that everybody's talking about: is you know, is Ross Wilson the man to do that? And for me, no, he isn't. He is not.
I'm with you, Martin. I don't think he is.
He's not the man. Now, I was listening to it. I was driving, so obviously I had my phone beside me and I had the podcast on and I wasn't looking at it or anything because I was driving. But yeah.
Have you not got Bluetooth in your car or are you driving a 1920s Skoda? Put it through your Bluetooth. Get it
I'm driving
an crystal clear.
I drive an 1874 Riley.
I don't know what that is. That
What I
push bike?
drive. See, none of you even know what a Riley is. But no, of course, Michael Beale's got to have a massive input. But Gio's not a stupid guy. Gerrard wasn't a stupid guy. They can only deal with the players that they're told they're allowed to get. So if you're asking me, do I feel confident, and taking from what William said, do I feel confident that we'll be able to bring in players of similar or better calibre than what we have now? My fear is that we don't, because you just have to look at Wilson's track record. If you went through the list of every single player that Ross Wilson's brought into our football club, it's a lot of players, by the way. A lot of players. So if he's brought in X amount of players, why was 7 of the starting lineup in that cup final the same as 2019? If Ross Wilson's so good at recruitment and so good at his job. So I take William's point 100%, absolutely. Morelos has been here too long. He needs to go, right? He's a fantastic player, but as a striker, he's brilliant at what he does. He just doesn't score enough goals. We need a striker that scores goals. So we brought in Roof. He didn't work. We don't play to Cholak's strengths, but hopefully that starts to work out a bit. Alan McGregor's past it. Tav, we can debate all night. Borna for me is not good enough. But at the end of the day, Ross Wilson's the man who's going to make that decision. So are we going to get players who are as good as or better quality than what we have? So my answer to that right now as I sit here would be no, we won't.
So just on that, Martin, you said, why were there 7 starters for 2019? And it's based on what William's been speaking about before, a fear of not being able to replace these guys. Well, you can't live in that fear, or else you just see this decline that we're seeing.
No, but we have tried to replace these guys. Ross Wilson has brought in a spectacular amount of players. And
just go back to the last year. Just go back to last January. The last January window, we've got one player still left that he signed in the window a year ago, and that's John Souttar. He's just come back from injury, and we signed him on a pre-contract at the time when he was injured.
Wolf, how many players came in under Gio?
Has outlived his usefulness. I've never said he needs to stay.
Yeah.
Well, he clearly didn't want Aaron Ramsey because he never can play them. So he clearly didn't. That was a Ross Wilson ego signing, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So the rest of the debate all night. But you're right, Ross Wilson for me. He's been at the club 4 years. He's been here too long. And I've got no
Been a
doubt his hands are
disaster.
tied with the budget that he's got, and he probably the Aaron Ramsey thing sticks out to me. It was something like a £2.5 million loan fee, and whatever wages we paid the guy, and the manager didn't want him. It was a ridiculous signing. Although we were all fawning over it when he brought him in.
100%.
You know? So I think Ross Wilson's been here too long, but it's not an easy job for the man to do, and I don't think the decisions are all completely down to him. But we need to replace him. But who do you replace him with? That's the problem.
Thing is, do you go back to the old days where you just let the managers make the decision? Like they're the ones that sign the players, so you just have a scouting department, and you'll have like the analytics guys, and basically, they sit down with the manager, and the manager says, "Well, I want him, him, and him," and that's it. So sometimes having too many people at the club is maybe causing too many problems. Like sort of back in the day, like Walter Smith would have just went to the board and went, "I want him," and that signing would have just went and get done. I know at the time we still had scouts, we still had a head scout who was obviously still watching players. But let's be honest, see at the end of the day, see if Walter Smith went to David Murray, I want him, then that deal probably 9 times out of 10 got over the line. Whereas now it feels like there's a chain of command, isn't there? There's like 5 people that you've got to get to that.
But Willie, in those days, David Murray did the negotiations. Would you be comfortable if we got rid of Ross Wilson if, for example, Stuart Robertson did those negotiations? Because it's going to be him. Because it's not going to be Douglas Park. It's going to be Stuart Robertson or John Bennett.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, so if that happens, our supporters are going to be any happier.
Exactly.
With that happening.
Because
this is the thing. What I was going to say is that see, no matter what the club do, it won't change, because as long as we're not winning cups or winning leagues, people will always pick fault in what's happening, because that's how football is now. Whereas in the past, like, nobody cared who your head scout was or who the scouts were that were out watching games. Nobody really cares. Whereas now, see, if you actually Google it, you can probably find most of the Rangers scouts that are actually out watching games. Or like that guy that posted the picture at the Preston game, I think it was, where there was a Rangers scout obviously watching, and people at that point were talking about Freddie Woodman, who's obviously a good goalkeeper. But then there was other players that night that played for Coventry that Rangers had been linked with before under Steven Gerrard. So these are the things. It's like, I'm sure they're watching games all the time, but the problem you have is, if we were to sign Freddie Woodman, how much would it cost? Would we need to pay £4.5 million to buy him? And then you've got his wages on top of that. How much of the summer budget does that take away? If you add Tillman in there at, the reported £5 or £6 million, that's £10 million just on 2 players.
I know, but
they've got £10 million. They've got £10 million already ring fence for 2 players. They tell us.
No, but
and one of those 2 players is gone.
Never mind
that brings in your goalkeeper.
Never mind that. That's the difference between the 2 football clubs in Glasgow right now. That Ange came in and went, I want this player, this player, this player. He spent 40-50 million, and they've managed to do really good negotiations where they've managed to get players out for good amounts of money. So that's the difference between the 2 football clubs right now. That's why we can't financially compete with them, and that's why we need somebody at the top. We need somebody in our sporting director, on the board, whoever, to come in and sort the mess out that Ross Wilson is leaving.
That's we're years behind them, because they had Peter Lowell doing that for 20 years, doing all the negotiations. Now he left for 6 months and he's come back again, right? They've had him doing that for about 20 years. That's why they get such good deals, because he's been striking good deals. I mean, they've had money. They've got good money for selling absolute fucking haddies, and I don't know how he manages to do it, but we need to do that. But we're saying Ross Wilson here 4 years and it's too long. They've had a guy doing it for 20 years and he's got it right. We need to get somebody that can do it right. Who that's going to be, how much control you're going to give him. I mean, really, Lowell's position as a CEO, right? Because you see Stuart Robertson, who's our CEO, doing what he does and negotiating contracts and selling players. Like, you just couldn't. They're totally different businessmen doing totally different jobs with the same job title. So it's.
Which is the state our football club's in right now, and which is correct. Which is why it won't get any better until such times as somebody on the board grows a set of balls and starts running the football club correctly. So sorry, Robert, carry on, buddy.
Listen, I'll tell you what's been really, really difficult. It's handling you guys because I've got 3 wins I'd rather spend the night with. This has been, it's been absolutely incredible. No, listen, I was just going to obviously talk about the Hibs game for 5 minutes before we said call it a night. But I think the boys were going to have a debate. I don't know if I want to have a debate now, but who's going to start up front? Wilf, you were clearly on the Cholak train. William, you were definitely on the Morelos train. Martin, where do you sit and who should start on Wednesday night?
I want Cholak to start, but I think he'll start Morelos.
Why?
Because it's Easter
Robert,
Road.
If it's who we want to start, I want them both to start. But you won't start them both.
Yes. But the fact that he's only going to start one, the fact it's away at Easter Road, a place that we have struggled at, the fact that we're still not playing a Cholak strengths, the fact that we're still a team that's set up for Morelos in the way that we play, I think that's one of the main reasons he'll start Morelos. Although I wish we were set up, and I think we can be with the likes of Cantwell and Raskin in there. If Hadji comes back in, I think the way that Hadji plays is set up perfectly for Cholak. If we could just get it working right, then Cholak starts every game for me. But he's going to go away. He's going to go with Morelos.
I think it's a certainty that he starts Morelos. I just don't see past it. I like what Cholak does. I think Cholak has been a really good signing for what we paid for him. I just think that on Wednesday night, I think he'll get back to the tried and trusted guys to a point as well. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if you maybe seen even Cantwell drop out the 11.
He can't drop Cantwell. He can't drop him after his last performance.
I just think in certain games, the manager will look at it. He knows how tough it is to go to Easter Road. He knows it's always a battle. And I think he just looks at certain guys and he'll think, even look at the cup final. I think that everybody that I spoke to, everybody thought Raskin was going to start. And then you get to the cup final and he doesn't start. Mm-hmm. And the manager basically comes out and says, this is the tried and trusted guys that done it against Celtic in the last game. These are the guys that played well at Tynecastle. That's why they've been selected. That's why I think he'll get back to what he's done previously. And I think you'll see, I think Cantwell will drop out. I really do.
See if he drops Cantwell and Raskin, right?
No, I don't think he'll drop Raskin, but I think he'll drop Cantwell out the 11 for Wednesday.
See if he drops Cantwell on a simple fact of how physical and that it's going to be, then I don't know what game of football Michael Beale's watching if he does that, because you just watched that game we played against Kilmarnock. Cantwell was everywhere. He was.
But then he
was winning the ball back.
Yeah, but that's clearly Ibrox, and you're talking about playing Hibs away. Many Rangers managers have changed it over the years when they go to certain grounds. It's just how it is. I don't agree with him doing that, but I just think he will. I think we called it the last time when we played at Pittodrie, the changes that he made that night, and he did it again in the cup final. I think it's really difficult, and I just think he'll get back to who he trusts. And I'm not saying that he doesn't trust Cantwell to the same level as the rest, but he knows that certain players have played at Easter Road before. He knows that they'll be aware of what it's going to be like, the atmosphere, all the other stuff that comes with it. I hope he does play Raskin and Cantwell, but I just think Cantwell will drop out the 11. I really do.
If he thinks that he can trust Lundstrom or Kamara to play in that game at Easter Road, then he's bringing all sorts of pressure on himself, Robert.
Well, he trusted Lundstrom to come back into the cup final and start.
And look what happened.
I don't think that will change his mind. I really don't.
Oh, well, then he's in trouble.
Just on that, Martin, because
Martin, he was.
Hold on, Wilf. Hold on. Let's give Robert his
order. I need a gavel. Jesus. No, just I like to look at the.
I've got 2 doing the stairs.
Send me one. This has been some hour, I'm telling you. I've aged about 20 years. Look at me. Right, so where was it? I like to think that he's a wee bit in the manager's presses, and he heaped a wee bit of praise on Cholak, so that's why I think he will start. But there was a bit where he did sort of wax lyrical about when Lundstrom came on and he sort of changed the game for him. So I do think Jack will drop out. Lundstrom comes in. I can't see Cantwell getting dropped, to be honest with you. But I definitely think Cholak starts. Wilf, you're in the Cholak camp. I know you are. Come on, supporting you.
Well, that was the point I was going to make about Lundstrom. The manager was waxing lyrical about him today. But I don't think he'll drop Jack. I think he might take Cantwell out.
What, and go with a 3?
And the only reason I can see him starting Morelos. Yeah. The only reason I would see him starting Morelos over Cholak is because Morelos is a rotten sub. He takes him ages to get in the game when he comes off the bench. So that would be my only rationale for him starting Morelos. But I would be starting Cholak. I mean, 2 assists at the weekend. You know what I mean? That's got to say something. You know what I mean? And he's like, he gave him a chance and he'll score. And hopefully Hibs come at us and we get a wee bit of space. But it's quite nice to be in the position of we're wondering who's going to start. Because not that long ago, the team picked itself because there was nobody else. You know? So it's quite a nice position to be in.
Martin, I'll come back to you. Obviously, the last time we went to Easter Road, Morelos saw red. I mean, how far have we come from there to obviously coming back and obviously under the new manager?
Well, there's no Porteous, which is a bonus, because that guy, I've went back and forth from my opinions on Porteous. There was even a very small period of time where I thought he might actually be able to do a job for us. I don't know. I think I had too much coffee that night or something like that. But Hibs are a team. How can I put this? Hibs aren't very good, right? But they're a team that are going to try and frustrate, annoy, get in about it. The crowd's going to be up for it. But in terms of how far we've came under Beale, I'm not so sure about Morelos, if I'm being brutally honest with you, in terms of his attitude, etc., etc. There was a game, I think it might have been Livingston, I'm not sure, but he was just about to have a kick out at somebody and he managed to just stop himself from doing it. So my worry is that at Easter Road, it can be a bit of a pressure cooker because, you know, these places, there's certain places where the fans will come and watch, and 9 times out of 10 it's Rangers that they come out to see. So I would expect Easter Road to be quite full. And my worry is that Morelos, do you know, I'm not even going to say it. No, do you know what? We have came a long way. Morelos is a far improved player and he'll be absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
Listen, I'm going to give the last word to William tonight. The manager.
I was going to say so many things there, but I thought, no.
But you done well. You controlled yourself. I didn't want another Ferguson gate. So the manager did say in his press as well that he thought that Hibs are going to come at us, which I think is probably when we play best. Would you agree with that?
Well, I mean, if you look at the Hearts game, for instance, Hearts obviously tried to have a go at us, and that obviously allowed us to play a little bit more. I don't know if Hibs will be quite as open as the manager said, but I think Hibs have been on a decent run of form. They've obviously won a few games. I think the lad up front, Yuan, I think his name is, he's got a bit of pace. He's quite direct. He's tricky as well. It's interesting. I think it'll be a tough game. I do still expect us to go there and win. You know, the manager's overall record since he's come in has been excellent. You know, we can't be too critical. Our away form's been very good. You know, so I do expect us to go there and win, but it certainly won't be an easy game. Easter Road's never, you know, been an easy game for a lot of Rangers teams for a long, long time. Even going back to the times, you know, we had to kind of sneak 1-0 wins. I think we had a 4-3 win there one day, didn't we, Wilf? It was Alberts that pinged one in the top bin.
We did. That was the day that I think that was the day that we put in 32 sick notes and we were still told.
That's right. Everybody had the cold or something like that, didn't they? The flu. We were struggling to put a team on the pitch. I just think it's a big game, and I do think the manager will. And I don't like to say it. Actually, I don't want to see Cantwell dropped out, as I said. But I just got a funny feeling he will, and I just think the manager will go with a more tight, like midfield free. And it'll probably be Sakala, Morelos, and obviously Ryan Kent. I think you'll be hoping that those three. Because the thing about Fashion is, right, he can score a great goal or he'll miss control of the ball, not run 20 feet away from him. But the thing with Sakala is, I think you've just got to keep playing him because he's likely to score and he's likely to do something that will help you win a game of football. Does he frustrate the life out of most people? He does, but I just don't think that he's one guy the manager will drop too often between now and the end of the season.
The one thing I will say about Hibs, though, is they get pumped off of Hearts in the Scottish Cup, but since then they've won 4 out of 5 games and another one was a draw. So they're actually coming in.
That's why I was on
there. Absolutely not. I knew them. They were in there. So they are coming into the game on Wednesday with a bit of form.
It's true.
No, absolutely. I'd agree with you there. I was obviously they scored a good few goals at the weekend as well. So
beat Aberdeen 6-0.
I think that the manager was sort of quoted today saying that he was looking forward to playing Rangers and thought he was going to have a goal. So
they should be though.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. No, they should be. So no, listen. I think it'll be, as you say, as William says, an open game. But I do think Cantwell will start. There's no way he drops him.
No, but do you know think, Robert? Do you know? I think, but they'll look at the way that Hearts played us, the way that Hearts came out, and we destroyed them simply because they were just so open. So I think they will come at us. They will put pressure on us, but they're not going to come all guns blazing the way Hearts did. No chance.
I think they'll look to counter attack. I think they'll look to try and like sort of let us bring the ball and look to burst on us. I think that's how they'll play against us because they do have pace at the top end of the pitch, and I think that's how they'll set up. I mean, the big thing for me is about us getting the first goal. You know, if we can get in control of the game, if we can get an early goal, I think we could go and score a few goals, but I think it all depends how we start the game. That's been our big problem basically for a couple of, if you go back 2 years basically. We don't generally start games that well that often. You know, it was actually a surprise at the weekend that we actually started the game off pretty well and we got a pretty comfortable half-time lead. Yet in the second half, we totally dropped off a cliff. Whereas most of this season, it's been really poor first half. Then we've kicked on in the second. I just think we need a big 90 minutes against Hibs. I think we need to show up. I think it's important for the players, for the manager to go there, get the win. And then I think we'll obviously rest and recuperate. But I say, I think tomorrow, Rangers are playing Celtic in the Glasgow Cup. I think we'll see at least, I think the maximum's 3 overage players. So I think you'll see at least 2, maybe 3. I think Ridvan's got to play. I wouldn't be surprised if John Souttar was in that squad. Maybe Yanis Hadji. Leon King obviously needs minutes, but he's okay age-wise, as is Adam Devine. I think it'll be a strong team tomorrow, but that might obviously then affect the squad on Wednesday night in terms of who's on the bench. But I think tomorrow's a good opportunity for some of the players in the Glasgow Cup game to get some minutes.
I would just be delighted with a 60-minute performance, if I'm being brutally honest. But you see the way things have been going. We played well for 45 against Kelly, and in the second half we've done nothing. I would just like us to play well for 60 and then build on that.
And that's brilliant, because that's improvement. That's improvement. Listen, so that is plenty for tonight. I just want to say to Wilf, plug your show tonight. What were you going to be talking about and who's on tonight with you?
Right, tonight, 10 o'clock. We're going half an hour later because Carl's on back shift. So 10 o'clock tonight, myself, Karen, Brian. Talking about the last two ladies' games, the 5-0 win against Partick last Wednesday and the 1-0 grind away at Spartans yesterday. So at least it's positive. It's 2 wins we're talking about. Look forward to the game on Sunday against Hamilton Accies, which conveniently is at 4:10 in Cumbernauld, so we can go to Ibrox and then shoot over to Cumbernauld and get both games at the weekend.
Love it.
And can I just say to folks watching, if you want immediate match reaction to any B team game or women's game, or you want access to any of our series or all of our other content as well, you can become a member of the Rabble Patreon for as little as £3 a month, and the link for that is in the description.
Brilliant. Okay then, no, fantastic. We are back on Wednesday night. Is that right, Martin? Or not
yes.
Tomorrow night? No, nothing tomorrow night. Wednesday night. Is that right?
We've got stuff on tomorrow night for the Patreon and YouTube members.
It depends. If the Glasgow Cup game goes well tomorrow, you might see this face again.
I'm going to be having nightmares about that face tonight. I'm telling you.
I'll tell you, man. I hope that the guy, whoever AA Studios is, the comments, mate, see if Rangers won the Glasgow Cup game, you should jump on, we can have a private chat, because some of the stuff you've talked tonight is absolute nonsense.
On that note, gentlemen, pleasure as always. Enjoy your evening, guys in the chat. Thanks for coming. It's been an absolute great show. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Does he know how to do it?